When Mara and Daniel Voss bought the house on Briar Lane, everyone in town told them the same thing. Beautiful place, they said. Then, after a pause, they added, shame about the cemetery. The cemetery was not beside the house so much as pressed against it, separated only by a low stone wall, half swallowed by moss. Its iron gate leaned inward like an old man with a secret. Beyond it stood rows of weathered headstones, some upright, some cracked, some sunken so deeply into the earth that only their rounded tops showed through the grass. Mara had expected to feel uneasy about it. Instead, on the first day, standing in the backyard with Daniel's arm around her waist, she looked over the wall and saw tall grass bending in the wind, wildflowers growing between the graves, and crows hopping lazily from stone to stone. "It's peaceful," she said. Daniel laughed. "That's one word for it. You don't like it? I like the price." She elbowed him gently. Romantic. "I'm very romantic. I bought you a house with 6 bedrooms, a wraparound porch, and a haunted view. It's not haunted. That's what people in haunted houses always say." The house itself was old but proud. It had pale yellow siding, tall windows with dark green shutters, and a roof that sagged slightly at the middle, as if it had carried too many winters. Inside, the wooden floors creaked, the walls smelled faintly of dust and lemon polish, and the rooms seemed larger than they should have been, full of strange corners and narrow closets. Mara loved it immediately. She had grown up in cramped apartments, always listening to neighbors argue through thin walls. This house felt like space, like a future, like something she and Daniel could restore together. Daniel had ideas for everything. The kitchen cabinets would be painted blue. The dining room would become a library. The smallest upstairs bedroom, the one with the slanted ceiling and a window facing the cemetery, would be his office. "And this one?" Mara asked, standing in the bedroom across the hall. Daniel leaned against the doorway. "Guest room?" Mara walked to the center of the room. The afternoon light fell in pale strips across the bare floor. "Maybe a nursery one day." His smile softened. "Yeah? Maybe." He crossed the room and took her hand. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The house settled around them, ticking and sighing in the heat. Then, from somewhere below, came a small, sharp sound. A giggle. Mara froze. Daniel lifted his head. "Was that you?" "No." They listened. The house was silent. Daniel grinned, but it looked forced. "Old pipes? Pipes don't giggle. Old pipes in a haunted house do." She pushed him away, laughing because she wanted to laugh, because laughing was better than admitting the sound had made the hair rise along her arms. That night, they slept on a mattress on the floor of the main bedroom, surrounded by boxes. The windows were open. The cemetery breathed damp air into the room. Somewhere outside, branches scratched softly against the siding. Mara woke at 3:12 a.m. She knew the time because the digital clock on Daniel's side of the mattress glowed red in the dark. At first, she did not know what had woken her. Then she heard it. A rolling sound. Soft, wooden, slow. Something moved across the floorboards in the hallway. Mara sat up. Beside her, Daniel slept heavily on his back, one arm thrown over his eyes. The rolling sound stopped just outside their door. Mara held her breath. A gentle tap came against the bedroom door. Once, then again. Tap. Tap. "Daniel!" she whispered. He did not move. The tapping stopped. Mara stared at the door until her eyes watered. The darkness under it looked thick and black. She imagined small fingers reaching through. Then, from the other side of the door, something rolled away again. The sound faded down the hall. Mara did not sleep for the rest of the night. In the morning,
she found a wooden yo-yo outside their bedroom door. It was old, painted red, with chipped edges and a fraying string wrapped around its center. The paint had worn away in places, showing dark wood beneath. It looked like something from another century, the kind of toy children no longer played with. Daniel crouched beside it, coffee mug in hand. "Where did that come from?" Mara asked. He picked it up and turned it over. Maybe the previous owners left it. In the hallway? Could have fallen out of a box. "We don't own a yo-yo." He looked at her then, and she saw the same unease in his face that she felt in her stomach. "Maybe it was already here," he said. "It wasn't. We swept this hall yesterday." Daniel stood and tossed the yo-yo lightly into the air, catching it with forced cheer. "Old house, weird stuff." "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Act like I'm being dramatic." His expression softened. "I'm not. I'm just trying not to make it bigger than it is." Mara looked toward the end of the hall, where the smallest bedroom stood with its door half open, the room that might someday be a nursery. "Put it in the trash," she said. Daniel hesitated. "Daniel!" "All right," he lifted both hands. "Trash." He threw the yo-yo into the kitchen bin himself. By noon, it was back. This time, it sat in the center of the dining room table. Mara found it while unpacking dishes. At first, she thought Daniel was teasing her. She called his name sharply, already angry. But Daniel was outside with the moving van, speaking to the delivery men. She could see him through the window. He was wiping sweat from his forehead, smiling politely, nowhere near the kitchen or dining room. The yo-yo lay on the table, its frayed strings stretched out like a tiny noose. Mara backed away from it. For a while, nothing else happened. Then, the house began to play with them. On Tuesday, Mara locked the upstairs guest room after storing old picture frames inside. The key was heavy and bronze, part of a ring of old keys the realtor had handed over at closing. Mara remembered locking it because the door stuck, and she had to put her shoulder against it before turning the key. On Wednesday morning, Daniel found a cloth doll sitting in the middle of that room. The room was still locked. The doll had button eyes and yarn hair the color of old straw. Its faded blue dress was dust-stained and patched at the hem. It sat upright on the bare floor, with its hands in its lap, facing the door as if it had been waiting for someone to come in. Daniel stared at it. Mara stood behind him, her hands cold. "Tell me you put that there," she said. "I didn't." "You opened this room last night?" "No." "Maybe the lock's broken." Daniel stepped into the room and examined the windows. Both were latched from the inside. The closet was empty. The floorboards had no gaps large enough for anything to be pushed through. Mara did not want to touch the doll, so Daniel picked it up with 2 fingers and carried it downstairs. "Trash?" he asked. She nodded. He threw it into the bin outside. At dusk, they found it sitting on the porch swing. Its button eyes faced the cemetery. Daniel stopped laughing after that. By the end of the week, there were more toys. A tin soldier on the stairs, a small rubber ball in the pantry, a cracked music box inside Daniel's locked office, though he swore he had the only key in his pocket all day. The music box was the worst. It was made of dark wood with a painted lid. On top, a little girl in a white dress stood beneath a painted tree. The paint had peeled away from her face, leaving it blank. Mara found it playing at midnight. The tune drifted through the house, thin and sweet, notes trembling in the air like a child humming from another room. Daniel came downstairs with a flashlight and a baseball bat, though neither of them said what good the bat would do against a song. The music came from his office. The door was locked. Daniel unlocked it with shaking hands. Inside, the music box sat open on his desk. Its tiny metal comb plucked out the tune, while the little painted girl turned slowly in a circle. Mara whispered, "Close it." Daniel crossed the room and snapped the lid shut. Music stopped. For one long second, the office was silent. Then, A child's voice behind them said, "Again." Mara screamed. Daniel spun around with the bat raised. The hallway was empty.
They slept in the car that night, or tried to. At dawn, Daniel said, "We need to talk to someone." "The police?" Mara asked. "And say what? Toys are breaking into our locked rooms? A priest? You're not even religious. Neither is the thing in our house." Daniel stared through the windshield at the house. It looked harmless in morning light. Yellow siding, green shutters, pretty porch. The cemetery behind it glowing silver with dew. His jaw tightened. "I'll call the realtor," he said. The realtor, Mrs. Pell, did not sound surprised. That was what frightened Mara most. There was a pause after Daniel explained. Not confusion, not disbelief, just a pause, as if Mrs. Pell had been waiting for the conversation and was disappointed it had come so soon. "Old houses make people nervous," she said finally. "Mrs. Pell," Daniel said, his voice flat, "a doll we threw away came back onto our porch." Another pause. "Perhaps children from the neighborhood are playing tricks. There are no children next door. On one side is a cemetery, and on the other side is a field." "I'm sorry you're upset." Daniel's face reddened. "Did something happen in this house?" "Many families have lived there. That's not what I asked." Mrs. Pell sighed. "Mr. Voss, every old property has stories attached to it. Most are exaggerated." "What stories?" "I really should go. I have an appointment. Mrs. Pell." The line clicked dead. Daniel lowered the phone slowly. Mara stood in the kitchen doorway. "She knows something." "Yeah. What do we do?" He looked around the kitchen, at the unpacked boxes, the half-painted cabinets, the sunlight pouring through the windows. For a moment, he looked very tired. "We finish unpacking," he said. Mara stared at him. "Are you serious?" "We don't have enough money to leave. Not yet. We put everything we had into this place." "Daniel!" "I know." His voice broke slightly and he looked away. "I know, Mara. But maybe if we ignore it, it stops." That evening, Mara walked the edge of the cemetery. She did not know why. Maybe because she wanted to prove the fear had boundaries. The house was one thing, the cemetery was another. If she could stand among the graves and feel nothing, maybe the toys would become less powerful in her mind. The gate groaned when she pushed it open. Inside, the air felt cooler. The grass brushed her calves. Names blurred on the stones. Whitlock, Ames, Bell, Harrow. Dates from the 1800s. Some graves were marked only with small stones bearing initials. Near the back, closest to the house, Mara found a row of children's graves. The stones were smaller than the others. Lucy Bell, 1889 to 1896. Samuel Pike, 1901 to 1907. Anna May Hollow, 1894 to 1902. She read the names silently, each one landing like a weight. A gust of wind moved through the cemetery. From the house came a faint sound, a child laughing. Mara turned. In an upstairs window, the smallest bedroom's curtain shifted. For just a moment, she saw a pale face looking down at her, a child's face. Then it was gone. Mara ran back inside and told Daniel. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he took the keys from the counter. "I'm checking that room." "No," Mara said. "Mara, I'm done being afraid of empty rooms." "It wasn't empty." "Then I'm done being afraid of whatever's in them." He went upstairs before she could stop him. Mara followed, heart pounding. The smallest bedroom door was shut. Daniel unlocked it. The room smelled damp and sweet, like old soil after rain. The slanted ceiling pressed low overhead. The cemetery window was closed, though Mara was certain they had left it open earlier to air out the room. In the center of the floor sat a toy train. It was black and red, made of painted tin, with 3 little cars behind it. The wheels were rusted. A string was tied to the front. Daniel stood very still. "Don't touch it," Mara whispered. He crouched. "Daniel! I just want to see." The train jerked forward. Daniel fell back with a shout. The train rolled across the floor by itself, wheels squeaking. It moved in a slow circle around him, dragging its string like a tail. Then it stopped, facing the window. A sound came from inside the walls. Tap, tap, tap. Not at the door this time, under the floor. Mara felt it through her bare feet. Daniel stood. That's enough. He grabbed the train. The room went suddenly cold. The door slammed shut behind them. Mara screamed and rushed to it, twisting the knob. It would not move. Daniel dropped the train. "Open it! I can't!" The tapping under the floor grew louder. Tap, tap, tap. Then came scratching, small, fast, desperate. Mara backed away from the door, tears burning her eyes. Daniel threw his shoulder against it, once, twice. The wood groaned but held. The window fogged from the inside. On the glass, letters appeared as if written by an invisible finger. No. Daniel stopped. More letters formed beneath the first. Not him. Mara stared. What does that mean? Daniel's breathing was loud in the cold room. The letters blurred. Water ran down the glass in thin lines. Then a final word appeared. Leave. The door swung open. They stumbled into the hallway. The next morning, Daniel went to the basement. Mara begged him not to. He said he only wanted to check the foundation beneath the smallest bedroom. If there were animals under the floorboards, trapped air, anything that could explain the sounds, he needed to know. "You saw the writing on the window," she said. "I saw condensation. It spelled words. I know what it looked like. You're lying to yourself." He turned on her then, not with anger, but fear sharpened into impatience. "What do you want me to do? Stand here and agree that a dead child is leaving toys in our house? Fine, maybe that's what it is. But if it is, then I need to know why it's here." Mara had no answer, so she watched him take a flashlight and go down the basement stairs. The basement was unfinished, with stone walls and a dirt floor in the oldest section. The house had been built in pieces over time. The newer half had concrete beneath it. The older half, the part closest to the cemetery, seemed almost to grow from the earth itself. Mara waited in the kitchen, listening to Daniel move below. For several minutes, there was only the dull scrape of his boots and the occasional thud of something being shifted. Then he called up, "Mara?" She went to the basement door. "What?" His voice sounded strange, hollow. "Come here." She descended slowly. The basement smelled of dust, damp stone, and something older underneath. Daniel stood in the far corner beneath the smallest bedroom. His flashlight beam shone on the dirt floor. At his feet was a child's wooden rocking horse. It was small, barely large enough for a toddler. Its paint had faded to gray. One eye was missing. The curved runners were cracked. Mara's throat tightened. Was that down here before? No. Daniel! He did not look at her. The dirt beneath the rocking horse was disturbed. Not dug up exactly, but uneven, as if something below had pushed against it. Daniel moved the horse aside. Scratched into the packed earth were 4 words. "Get off my bed." Mara covered her mouth. Daniel stared at the message for a long time. Then, from above them, the floorboards creaked. Once, twice, like small feet crossing the room overhead. Daniel lifted the flashlight toward the ceiling. "Mara," he said quietly, "go upstairs." "No! Go upstairs now!" The light bulb hanging from the basement ceiling began to flicker. The rocking horse moved, just a little, back, forth, back, forth. Its cracked wooden runners whispered against the dirt. Daniel reached for Mara, but the flashlight went out. Darkness swallowed them. Mara heard Daniel gasp, then the sound of something heavy stumbling backward. She reached blindly for him. "Daniel!"
His hand found hers for 1 second, then something pulled him away. There was a crash. The light bulb flashed once, bright white. In that flash, Mara saw Daniel on the floor near the old stone wall, his eyes open, his face filled not with pain but with disbelief. Then the basement went black again. By the time the paramedics arrived, Daniel was gone. They said it looked like his heart had simply stopped. No marks, no wounds, no reason a healthy 34-year-old man should have died on a dirt basement floor beside a broken child's toy. The police asked questions. Mara answered badly. She said there had been toys. She said locked rooms had opened. She said there was something under the house. They wrote things down but did not look at her when they did. Mrs. Pell came by after the ambulance left. She stood on the porch in a gray coat, twisting her gloves in her hands. "I'm sorry," she said. Mara looked at her through the screen door. "You knew," Mara said. Mrs. Pell's face crumpled slightly. "I knew stories. What is under my house?" The older woman looked toward the cemetery wall. "Mara," she whispered, "some graves were moved when the house was expanded." The wind rose behind her, rattling the dry leaves along the porch. Mara's hand tightened on the doorframe. "What graves?" Mrs. Pell's eyes filled with tears. Before she could answer, from upstairs came the soft, familiar sound of a music box beginning to play. Thin notes drifted down through the ceiling, sweet and trembling, as if the house itself had learned to hum. Mrs. Pell stepped back from the screen door. Mara did not move. The tune was the same one from Daniel's office, slow, delicate, childlike. Each note seemed to land inside her chest and turn there like a key. "What graves?" Mara asked again. Mrs. Pell looked toward the stairs behind Mara, then back toward the porch. "You should not stay here tonight." Mara laughed once, a broken sound. "My husband died in that basement yesterday. You think I care where I sleep? I think you should be alive to learn the truth." The music box stopped. For a moment, the silence was worse. Then something rolled across the floor above them, a small wooden wheel, a toy. Mara opened the screen door so suddenly Mrs. Pell flinched. "Tell me," Mara said. The older woman swallowed. "Not here. Here is exactly where you're going to tell me. Mara, you sold us this house. I was only the agent. You knew something was wrong." Mrs. Pell's eyes shone with tears. Everyone knew something was wrong, but no one knew what to do with a house that people kept buying and leaving. The bank wanted it sold. The town wanted it occupied, and I told myself the stories were old stories. Daniel is dead. I know. No, you don't. Mara stepped onto the porch. The cemetery waited beyond the backyard wall, gray and still beneath the evening sky. The wind moved through the tall grass, bending it in waves. Headstones leaned like listening figures. Mrs. Pell gripped her gloves tighter. "When the house was first built," she said quietly, "it was smaller, just the front rooms, kitchen, and one bedroom upstairs. The cemetery was already there. Later, around 1910, a family named Whitcomb bought it and expanded the back half." Mara looked at the house behind her. The back half, the nursery room, Daniel's office, the basement with its dirt floor. They built over graves? They claimed the graves had been moved. Claimed? Mrs. Pell nodded faintly. There were records, papers, a few names moved to the newer section of the cemetery, but people said the work was rushed. Some headstones were broken. Some markers were already too weathered to read. There was a child's grave near the wall. A chill slid through Mara. A child. Yes. Name? I don't know. From inside the house came a soft thump, then another. Mara turned. At the top of the stairs, the cloth doll sat upright. It had not been there a second ago. Its button eyes faced them. Mrs. Pell made a small sound. Mara walked inside. "Mara, don't!" But Mara was past fear. Fear belonged to yesterday, to the hours before Daniel's hand had slipped from hers in the dark. What lived inside her now was colder. The doll's faded blue dress was dusty. Its yarn hair hung over one side of its face. Mara climbed the stairs slowly. The doll remained still. At the top, she crouched in front of it. "What do you want?" she whispered. The house creaked. The doll tipped backward. Beneath it lay a folded scrap of paper, yellow with age. Mara picked it up. The paper was brittle, the folds worn thin. She opened it carefully. A child's handwriting covered the page in uneven letters. "I am not sleeping." Mara stared at the words.
Mrs. Pell came up behind her, breathing hard. "My mother used to tell me a story," Mrs. Pell whispered, "about a little girl who lived near the cemetery. She was buried with her favorite toys." Mara looked at the doll. "Where is she buried now?" Mrs. Pell did not answer. Mara stood. "Under my house." The floorboards above the back rooms groaned, though no one walked there. Mrs. Pell touched Mara's sleeve. "There is someone who might know more. Reverend Hale. His grandfather kept church records before the old chapel burned. He has copies, I think." Mara looked down the hall toward the smallest bedroom. The door was closed. From beneath it came a faint scraping, small, patient. Mara turned back to Mrs. Pell. "Take me to him." They left the house as twilight thickened. Mara did not pack. She did not lock the door. She only grabbed Daniel's jacket from the peg beside the kitchen and wrapped it around herself, though it smelled like him and nearly broke her apart. Mrs. Pell drove. The town passed in a blur of dark windows and empty sidewalks. Briar Glen was the kind of place that looked charming in daylight and abandoned after sunset. Old storefronts, a pharmacy with a flickering sign, a church steeple cutting into the purple sky. Reverend Hale lived behind the church in a white parsonage with ivy climbing the walls. He was a thin man with silver hair and tired eyes. When he opened the door and saw Mrs. Pell, his expression changed. Then he saw Mara. "You're from the Voss house," he said. Mara almost laughed again. Even here, even blocks away, the house had a name. "My husband died there," she said. The Reverend closed his eyes briefly. "Come in." His study smelled of paper, wax, and old wood. Shelves lined every wall. He set a kettle on without asking if they wanted tea, perhaps because giving his hands a task kept him steady. Mrs. Pell explained in a low voice. Reverend Hale listened without interrupting. When she finished, he went to a locked cabinet and removed a flat wooden box. Inside were stacks of copied records, newspaper clippings, maps, and handwritten notes. "The cemetery records before 1914 are incomplete," he said. "A fire damaged many originals, but my grandfather copied what he could." He spread a map across the desk. It showed the cemetery as it had once been, before the house expansion. Smaller, neater, the stone wall marked clearly. Several graves near the boundary had names written beside them. Mara leaned closer. One name had been circled in pencil. Elsie May Rowe, 1903, 1909. 6 years old. Mara's breath caught. "Elsie," she whispered. The Reverend looked at her. "You have heard the name." "No, but the name felt familiar anyway, as if it had been whispered in another room while she slept." "What happened to her?" Mara asked. Reverend Hale removed a newspaper clipping from the box. She died of fever. Her mother had died the year before. Her father buried her with toys because he said she had been frightened of the dark. Mara looked away. The room seemed to tilt. Daniel had died above a child's grave, a child who had been afraid, a child whose resting place had been covered by floorboards, furniture, footsteps, arguments, paint cans, boxes, and plans for a nursery. "She wasn't trying to scare us at first," Mara said slowly. Mrs. Pell frowned. "Mara? The yo-yo, outside the bedroom, the doll in the locked room, the train facing the cemetery window. Get off my bed! Not him! Leave!" Mara pressed a hand to her mouth. "She wasn't punishing Daniel at first. She was trying to make us understand." Reverend Hale folded his hands. "Spirits, if you believe in such things, are not always clear. Pain can make a message into a storm." Mara thought of the basement going black, Daniel's gasp, his hand ripped from hers, his face in the flash of light. Her voice hardened. She killed him. No one answered. Outside, the church bell struck 8. The sound made the windows tremble. On the Reverend's desk, something rolled out from beneath the map. A small, red yo-yo. Mrs. Pell cried out. Reverend Hale backed away. Mara stared at it. The string unwound by itself, crawling across the desk like a pale worm. The yo-yo rolled once, twice, then stopped at Mara's hand. A child's voice whispered from nowhere and everywhere. "Home." The kettle screamed in the kitchen. Mrs. Pell began to pray under her breath. Mara picked up the yo-yo. It was cold. "She followed us," Mrs. Pell whispered. "No," Mara said. She closed her fingers around the toy. "She came to bring me back." They returned to Briar Lane under a moon hidden by clouds. Reverend Hale came with them, carrying a worn leather Bible, a lantern, and the cemetery map. Mrs. Pell brought a shovel from her garage, though her hands shook so badly she could barely lift it. The house waited, with every window dark. The front door stood open. Mara was certain she had left it closed. Inside, the air smelled of damp soil. They stepped into the foyer. Toys lined the staircase, dozens of them. Wooden blocks, tin cars, cloth animals, a cracked porcelain cup, a ball, a little drum, a jack-in-the-box with its lid shut tight. They sat on each step, leaving only a narrow path up the middle. Reverend Hale whispered, "Do not touch anything unless you must." Mara looked toward the basement door. It was open. A faint light glowed below. Not electric light, candlelight. Mrs. Pell shook her head. "I can't go down there." Mara said nothing. She took the shovel from her. The basement stairs groaned beneath Mara's feet. Reverend Hale followed with the lantern. The basement was colder than before. The dirt floor seemed darker, almost black. In the far corner, beneath the smallest bedroom, the wooden rocking horse waited. Around it sat more toys, arranged in a careful circle. The music box was there too, open but silent. Mara stepped closer. The words in the dirt had changed. Not "get off my bed." Now they read, "Where is my stone?" Mara looked at Reverend Hale. He unfolded the map, hands trembling. Her grave marker would have been near the wall. If it was not moved properly, it may still be buried nearby. Mara took the shovel and went to the old stone foundation where the basement met the earth. She dug. The first strike sank into soft dirt. The second hit a root. The third scraped stone. Mara dropped to her knees and clawed the dirt away with her hands. A flat piece of grave marker emerged. It was cracked in half. Only part of the inscription remained. Elsie M. Mara bowed her head. "I'm sorry,"
she whispered. The basement answered with silence. She cleared more dirt. The broken stone was wedged beneath the foundation, as though it had been used as scrap when the house was expanded. A grave marker turned into building material, a child's name hidden under a wall. Reverend Hale's face went pale with anger. "They knew," he said softly. "Whoever built this knew." The rocking horse began to move, back, forth, back, forth. The lantern flickered. Mrs. Pell called from upstairs, "Mara?" Then she screamed. Reverend Hale turned. Mara grabbed the broken stone with both hands. The basement shook. Dust fell from the beams. Toys rattled in their circle. The music box snapped shut by itself. A child began crying. The sound came from beneath the floor, above the ceiling, inside the walls, all around them. Not loud, but full of such loneliness that Mara felt her anger crack open.
She saw, not with her eyes, but somehow in her mind, a little girl lying in a narrow bed, burning with fever, clutching a cloth doll. A father weeping beside a small grave, toys lowered into the ground. Darkness, quiet. Then years later, men with shovels, wood, nails, stone dragged away, weight pressing down, footsteps forever above her. Mara held the broken marker against her chest. "I know," she said through tears. "I know what they did." The crying stopped. A whisper brushed her ear. "Hurts." Mara closed her eyes. "I know. Cold. Will move you. Mine. Yes, your stone, your toys, your name." The house gave a long, low groan. From upstairs came a crash. Reverend Hale grabbed Mara's arm. "We need to get out." "No," Mara said. "We need to finish." They carried the broken marker outside. The moment Mara stepped through the back door, the cemetery gate swung open by itself. The path through the grass seemed clearer than before, though Mara knew there had been no path there. The headstones watched in crooked rows. Mrs. Pell stood on the porch, pale and crying. Around her feet, toys had gathered in a half circle, blocking the steps. Mara looked at them. "Let her come," she said. One by one, the toys shifted aside. Mrs. Pell ran to them. Together, the three of them entered the cemetery. Reverend Hale used the old map to find the place where Elsie May Rowe should have rested. It was near the wall, under a thorn bush, beside an unmarked dip in the earth. Mara knelt there. The soil was sunken, empty, or not empty, she thought, disturbed, forgotten. Reverend Hale and Mrs. Pell dug carefully. They did not dig deep. They were not searching for a body. They were making space for the stone, the name, the memory that had been stolen. Mara placed the broken marker into the earth. Elsie M. Not enough. Not the full name. Not enough for a child who had spent a century trying to be remembered. Mara took a flat stone from beside the wall. With the edge of the shovel, she scratched the missing letters beneath the broken marker. ELSIEMAYROWE, 1903 to 1909. The letters were uneven, but readable. Reverend Hale began to speak softly, not loudly, not dramatically, just words for the dead, words for rest, words for a child who should never have been lost beneath someone else's home. As he spoke, Mara placed the toys around the grave, the red yo-yo, the cloth doll, the tin train, the music box. The rocking horse was too large to carry, but when Mara looked back toward the house, she saw it standing at the cemetery gate. No one had moved it. It rocked once in the grass, then became still. The wind faded. The cemetery settled. For the first time since Mara had entered the house on Briar Lane, the silence felt natural. Then, near the grave, a small shape appeared.
A girl stood beneath the thorn bush. She was pale, almost made of mist, with dark hair cut to her chin and a white nightdress that stirred, though there was no wind. Her face was not frightening. That was what hurt most. She looked tired, confused, very young. Mara could not breathe. Elsie looked at the toys, then at the grave marker, then at Mara. "Mine," the child whispered. Mara nodded, tears running down her face. "Yours." Elsie looked past her. For one terrible second, Mara thought she would see Daniel standing there too, but there was only the cemetery, the wall, the dark shape of the house. Mara's chest tightened with fresh grief. "Why him?" she asked. Elsie lowered her eyes. The answer came not in words, but in a feeling. Fear, rage, confusion, the weight of footsteps overhead, a man's hands moving the rocking horse, the belief that he was another builder, another thief, another person taking what was hers. Not hatred, a mistake, a child's mistake. Mara covered her mouth. "I loved him," she whispered. Elsie looked up. "I did too," the child said. Mara did not understand at first. Then she remembered the words on the fogged window. Not him. Elsie had tried to stop something in herself, tried to warn them, tried to make them leave before her pain became stronger than her kindness. Mara sank to her knees. "I don't know how to forgive you." Elsie's small face crumpled. The music box began to play. This time, the song was soft and distant, coming from the grave itself. Elsie turned toward it, her shape thinned at the edges, silver in the moonlight. Reverend Hale whispered, "Mara," but Mara could not look away. Elsie picked up the doll and held it to her chest. "Warm now," she whispered. Then the little girl faded, not suddenly, slowly, like breath leaving glass. When she was gone, the cemetery was still. Mara stayed beside the grave until dawn. No toys moved, no voices whispered, no cold fingers touched the back of her neck. Only morning came, pale and quiet, spreading across the headstones.
In the weeks after, the town finally told the truth. Men from the Historical Society came, then surveyors, then a careful team from the county. They confirmed what the old map had shown. Several graves near the cemetery wall had been disturbed when the house was expanded. Some had been moved properly, others had not. The back half of the house was condemned. Mara did not argue. She never slept there again. She sold what she could, gave away what she could not bear to keep, and donated the property so the cemetery could be restored. Workers removed the rear addition board by board. Under the floor they found old fragments of markers, rusted coffin handles, and small personal things that had no business being beneath a home. Each item was recorded, each name was searched for, each grave was marked. Daniel was buried in another cemetery, far from Briar Lane, beneath a maple tree. Mara visited him every Sunday. For months, she spoke to him as if he were sitting beside her. She told him about the investigation, about Elsie, about how angry she still was, about how some nights she woke reaching for his hand. One autumn afternoon, nearly a year after his death, Mara returned to Briar Lane. The house was smaller now, returned to its original shape. Fresh grass grew where the back rooms had been. The cemetery wall had been repaired, but a gate had been added between the yard and the graves, so no one could pretend the dead were separate from the living. Elsie's grave stood near the wall. A proper stone had been placed there. Elsie May Rowe, beloved child, at rest. At its base sat a small red yo-yo, newly painted. Mara had brought it herself. She stood before the grave for a long time. "I'm still angry," she said quietly. The wind moved through the grass. but I hope you're not cold anymore." Behind her, the old house creaked in the breeze. Mara turned. In the upstairs window, where the smallest bedroom had once been, there was only open sky. No face, no curtain, no watching child. Mara exhaled. Then, from somewhere inside the cemetery, she heard a sound. A child laughing. Not cruelly, not hungrily, just laughing far away, as if running through sunlight. Mara closed her eyes. For the first time, she did not run.